And hello, everybody. My name is Sam Billimoria, and a very, very warm welcome to this timeless Zoroastrian legacy presentation. This is a series of 3 presentations, and this is the first one. You have the agenda in front of you. First of all, before we start, I'd like to start with 2 Yatha and 1 Hashem, so please join me in that. Yatha Hueryo Tharatu Sasadaji Hachao. Vange hush does dominingo, Shalthan and Amange hush vastai, Shathram chau raya imdriga bioda that vastarim, Yatha hu erio tharatu sasatachi hachau, Vange hush does dominingo, Shalthan and Amange hush vastai, Shathram chau raya imdriga bioda that vastarim, Hashem Bahu Vaistamasti Ustaushti Ustam Mai Hadashai Vahistai Hashem. Thank you again, and a very warm welcome to everybody who is joining. As you know, this is about timeless Zoroastrian legacy. And before I start, I have to really thank Mr. SD Tantra for putting this together, and Tantra Technologies. He's been a big help. He's always a big help. He's a great asset to the community and to other people who have helped me coordinate this together. So let us start on with the agenda. Today's agenda is the first of the presentation. It's the first declaration of human rights of Cyrus the Great and his cylinder or tablet. It talks about Cyrus, Darius, Xerxes, and Artaxerxes, their achievements, their legacy to the world, their references in the Bible and other scriptures, the 3 wise men, the Magi's, and then we will talk about the wrap-up and takeaway points. So let us go to the next slide now. Thank you, Yesdi. Okay, now everything we discuss over here is based on our basic tenet on Asha. And Asha, as you know, is the very foundation of our religion. Well, it is a very simple word. It is often misinterpreted, but it is very difficult to practice, and it has many aspects regarding law, order, beauty, piety, righteousness, truth, justice, equality, and freedom. Well, this is very interesting. And freedom, as you notice, is very last. So when you go through the journey of all the other aspects, then you attain freedom. Now, what is this freedom? Freedom is not what you call the freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is prohibited in Zoroastrian religion. So you shall speak the truth and nothing but the truth. So God help you. Again, there is no freedom within the religion. There is no freedom in religion, in any religion. It is a package deal. So it comes with a covenants and it comes with canons. And thou shalt and thou shalt not. So you do certain things and you don't do certain things. And that is the spiritual contract you make with Asur Zarathustra and Ahura Mazda when you did your Nauja. So what is this freedom we are talking about? This is the freedom of the catharsis of our soul. That is, you will talk about the white light. Every religion has an import of white light to take away the darkness that is within our soul. And the process of the journey of our soul and the practice of the religion, we take away that dark light. And that is the freedom we are talking about, the freedom of the soul, that when you perfect that, then you go to for Shogat. Okay, all right. Yeah, I was just going to talk about other things. And why this topic is because of the fact that we go on burning platforms and build pejoratives to everybody, but that is not what nature is about. Nature is about unity and beauty. Also, the fact that in the diaspora, the youth are always complaining to us as to they do not have any means to show scholarly works to their peers. They cannot relate Zoroastrianism to their peers. And that is one of the main reasons I also thought that I would have this and share it with the community, what little I know. And that legacy is posterity. Now we will have to toggle. So you're great, and the tablet and the significance.
Under Nebuchadnezzar.
Can you see it now?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
The British Museum in London. Exhibited in room 52 in the section covering the history of ancient.
I'll just Toggle it
The
a
original
little bit in
object
front.
is one of the most important archaeological finds associated with the empires of the ancient world. An artifact named after and attributed to the exploits of a man known to Iranians as Kuresh-i-Borzorg, or in English, Cyrus the Great. This object is known as the Cyrus Cylinder, and it declares the victories of the celebrated king of ancient Persia and founder of the Achaemenid dynasty, Cyrus II, who between 559 and 530 BC ruled over the greatest empire the world had seen. Not only does this object represent one of the most important archaeological treasures of the history of the ancient world, but it stands as an amazing verification that the Bible is the inspired word of Almighty God. The Bible makes specific reference to Cyrus as the conqueror of Babylon and identified him as God's chosen instrument in the liberation of the people of Judah from captivity in Babylon, to return to Jerusalem and to rebuild the temple previously destroyed by the Babylonians under Nebuchadnezzar.
Okay, so we have to move on from here, and that was just to give you an idea about the importance of the tablet and the spiritual divine forces behind that. Now, when we talk about Asha, we also have to look about our table of Ameshaspans, and that is what Zoroastrianism is all about. And I'm sorry if you can't see this. I'll try and move this around so that people can have a full idea of the. So now you have this, the Ameshaspans over here, and these are the Ameshaspans, and then these are the attributes. Now I'm getting away from the table again. Oh my God. Okay, so how can I move this around? Because I want to see what, okay, so here it is. I have to move things around over here. So you can see the attribute human virtues, protector of, and the co-workers. And the co-workers you will see over here. And, I will just keep this blocked because of the screen, but you can see the co-workers over here. And then we talk about attributes. These are the functions of the Ameshaspans in nature, in the full creation. So this is the human virtues in the material world, and then they are a protector of. So when we talk about Ormuz, you know that he is omnipotent, that he's for humanity and love for the divine. Now remember that man has the stewardship of all creations. He has to take the creations very seriously. And if you default on that and breach on that there are sins that are enumerated in Patet Pashamani. So anything, and in Patet Pashamani, there are a lot of other sins which are mentioned, hearsay, and then misinterpreting all the literature and all that. So there's a lot of things in Patet Pashamani. So any of that breach is a sin. Then you have divine consciousness, an important factor in for Cyrus, which goes to the great mind, to the good mind, and then selfless love, and it goes over cattle. So these are the things that we have to take care of as far as creation of Ahura Mazda is concerned. We have Adibesh, which is divine law and live every moment of life. Then Sharivar, which has divine authority, again an important factor in Cyrus, which we will see. And then, it is about positive attitude, then Spendamat, bounteous devotion, and humility and patience, which also Cyrus had. Now, it is that these Ameshaspans, they work in twos. So now Baman works with, Baman was with Spendamat, and then that Adibesh with Sharivar and Khodat with Amarat. This is the kind of the piggybacking of the Ameshaspans, if you will. And then you have Khodat, which is perfection. And yes, you have to strive for perfection, as I told you, and that is towards Pershogot, and then Amadat and Amarta. So okay, so we're talking about Cyrus the Great. He lived from 590 to 530 BCE. Oh, now what happened? Okay, founder of the Achaemenid dynasty. His mother was Mandana, father Cambyses, and grandfather was Astyages. He was taught wisdom of decision making. Again, wisdom, Bahumana. We go back to Baman Ameshaspan and place the needs of others before his own. This is again Baman Ameshaspan, and Spenta Armite also comes into the picture. Now let's talk about Vahukshetra. We know that he had good mind because it says over here, taught wisdom of decision making. We also saw in the video that he was divinely ordained by the word of the Lord the God, and therefore he had Shatra. He had divine power. So we combine the two and we go with Vahumana and Shatra, and that is Vahushatra. Okay. So yeah, we can go to the next one. That is now, this is the conquest. He conquered Media in 549 BC, Lydia, that is Turkey, in 546, Babylon 539, and other countries. And these are the various titles. So we can go to the next slide now. Yes, Dee. Okay, and this is the main thing that we are, discussing today. This is the original tablet in the London Museum. It is in room 52. This is the original one, and the one you see to the right is in the United Nations building. It is on the second floor, the Assembly Hall, and the foundation that you see is the translation. It's an Akkadian script, so you will see all about that. And now we have to watch a short video. So if you go over here, ESD, you will see, and I will tell you, this is the one that you must open up. And then, if you can put that on, if you can start, yeah, there you go. Thank you. Now you see over here, Fighting Darkness.
The Empire of Iran,
Go ahead.
The Persians united under Cyrus, became the first great world empire. This empire is, in fact, the Middle East as we now know it, and it's what shapes the Middle East as we now know it. Cyrus sets up a model of how you run a great multinational, multi-faith, multicultural society. And Cyrus makes a declaration. And that is what this cylinder is. This object is one of the great declarations of a human aspiration. It stands with the American Constitution. It certainly says far more about real freedoms than Magna Carta. It is a document that can mean so many things for Iran and for the region.
Okay, we'll stop the video now. We go back to the screen. We go back to the, yes, we go back. We go back to the slides. Thank you. To the next slide, please. Okay, so here is Cyrus' discovery. The cylinder was discovered in Babylon in 1879 by Hormuz Rassam, who was an Iranian archaeologist. It is a clay cylinder, barrel-shaped, 9 inches by 4 inches, like a rugby ball, if you will. Its barrel-shaped form was common in foundation deposits of ancient monuments in those days. It is in Babylonian Akkadian cuneiform script, and it declares Cyrus' Babylon conquest in 539. Next slide, please. Okay. So describes Cyrus's Babylon conquest in 539 BC, portrays him king of kings. Babylonian king Nabonidus was defeated. Cyrus was welcomed by the people of Babylon as the new ruler and entered the city in peace. He appealed to the local embassies. Cyrus was a benefactor to the citizens of Babylonia, improved their lives, and they were prosperous against him, repatriated displaced people, and restored temples and cult sanctuaries across Mesopotamia. And he repaired the city wall of Jerusalem. And there it says over here, the Lord, the God of heaven, has given me all the kingdom of the earth. So that was from Judea. That is from Ezra 1.2. That's a Bible quote. Next slide, please. Okay, again, records the moral and divine authority of Cyrus. That is what the tablet is doing. Mission to bring freedom and justice to Babylon. Again, aspects of Asha coming in, freedom and justice. Okay, this is the horizontal freedom we were talking about. This is the horizontal freedom means people moving from place to place. Records his edict that no citizens be harmed or terrorized, the oppressed be free from oppression is a very important aspect in democracy. Enslaved to be free from bondage. He was the first emperor to talk about freedom from slavery. And that has kind of percolated into the present age. Civil works and buildings in ruins be repaired or rebuilt. Steps be taken to ensure public safety, and Cyrus's governance of multi-religious, multicultural societies was the first in history. We saw that in the video. If you saw it, you saw how it was serving as a model to the founding fathers, and Thomas Jefferson, who was considered to be probably the most important founding father, considered Cyrus his hero, and we'll talk more about it in the second presentation that will follow this one. Later on, after I don't know after how long, but later on. Next slide. So this is what it is. After 70 years of capture in Babylon, the Jews were allowed to return to their native land. Cyrus gave them practice to freedom of religion and culture. This is the most important thing in any democracy, that you have freedom of religion. If you don't have freedom of religion, you cannot have freedom of worship. And therefore, the other things that are there cannot be just practiced. Okay, permission rebuild their destroyed temple at Jerusalem, gave them facilities and monetary assistance to rebuild the temple with Persian treasury. The Jews were therefore grateful to Cyrus, who pursued a tolerant of religious policy. We have seen about Vaukshatara, which made him famous in history in the world. And there he says God has appointed him to build a house in Jerusalem. This is Ezra 1.2. Next slide. So the Cyrus's cylinder has got unique aspects, and we'll spend a little time on that. And, we'll stand again, about the capture of Babylon. So bringing peace to the region after millennia of violence and bloodshed, emancipation, abolition of slavery and forced labor, repatriation of the captives and displaced people, freedom of worship, religion, cultural values, and civil rights, return of all seeds, goods, and religious vessels, and repair of the ruined temples. And that is why it is called the first Declaration of Human Rights. And now, I will pause over here before we go to the video. We are about halfway through the presentation. I want to take sort of the temperature of the room. In case you have a question, type it in the chat box, and the moderator, Mr. ESD Tantra, will relay it to me, and I will make as much clear as it is possible. But I just want to make sure that we are through this conceptual part of it and people get the idea of what the impact is all about. And then the rest follows as somewhat of a history which is easy to follow. Now we have over here these images are important because it says 70 over here. Now what this 70 is, the 70th anniversary of the UN Declaration of Human Rights that was in 2015. And it correlates to the 70 years of captivity as we saw from the Jews from Babylon to Jerusalem. And this is the Human Rights Day. And you can see the aspects of Asha over here, dignity, hope, equality, then peace and everything. So now we will toggle the next video and I will show you which video it is. And now we will have to move through this video. So I will move you through the number. So we will toggle the next video. We will see the first 10 seconds and then ESD, you have to toggle it to 1 minute and 44 seconds. And then end at 4 minutes, 15 seconds. I will tell you about it. Because otherwise, this presentation will get a bit too long. I don't know if I've shown you which video we have to see. Yes, that's the one. What are human rights? That's great.
Human rights is, geez, that's a good question.
Human rights. Oh, that's a tough one.
Wow.
Okay, move to 1 minute, 45 seconds, ESD.
Know how to give that a definition.
I would probably.
Religion, the right to...
ESD, move to 1 minute.
Is there supposed to be a list somewhere I should be aware of?
According to the United Nations, there are a total of 30 human rights, which are usually lumped together and called simply human rights. They're all listed out in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is the world's most widely accepted document on the subject. But it was a long time in coming. At first, there were no human rights. If you were in with the right crowd, you were safe. If you weren't, well, you weren't. But then a guy named Cyrus the Great decided to change all that. After conquering Babylon, he did something completely revolutionary. He announced that all slaves were free to go. He also said people had the freedom to choose their religion, no matter what crowd they were a part of. They documented his words on a clay tablet known as the Cyrus Cylinder. And just like that, human rights were born. The idea spread quickly to Greece, to India, and eventually to Rome. They noticed that people naturally followed certain laws, even if they weren't told to. They called this natural law, but it kept getting trampled on by those in power. Not until 1,000 years later in England did they finally get a king to agree that no one can overrule the rights of the people, not even a king. People's rights were finally recognized, and they were now safe from those in power. Kind of. It still took a bunch of British rebels declaring their independence before the king got the point that all men are created equal. Which isn't to say he liked the idea, but he couldn't stop them, and America was born. The French immediately followed with their own revolution for their own rights. Their list was even longer, and they insisted that these rights weren't just made up. They were natural. The Roman concept of natural law had become natural rights. Unfortunately, not everyone was so thrilled. In France, a general named Napoleon decided to overthrow the new French democracy and crown himself emperor of the world. He almost succeeded, but the countries of Europe joined forces and defeated him. Human rights was again a hot topic. They drew up international agreements, broadly granting many rights across Europe. But only across Europe. The rest of the world somehow still didn't qualify. Instead, they got invaded, conquered, and consumed by Europe's massive empires. But then a young lawyer from India decided enough was enough. His name was Mahatma Gandhi, and in the face of violence, he insisted that all people of Earth had rights, not just in Europe. Eventually, even Europeans started to agree.
Okay, shut it off. Now we go to the next screen, ESD. Thank you. Okay, so the next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so now we come. He is one of the greatest figures in history of the world. Brilliant achievements earned him the title of great. Typical Aryan characteristics. Let me stop a little bit over here. You see, we all talk about Aryan, Avage, and Aryan, you see. Now, there is a misconception that Aryan is a superior race, and that left to a lot of tragedy in the last century, as you know. Well, you know, it is a bigoted racial slur, and it really degrades the whole aspect of Zoroastrianism. And I will tell you why. Because Aryan is actually a Sanskrit root word. It talks about noble deeds, about noble thoughts. So the people coming from that geographical area did noble deeds and noble thoughts. And you also have Indo-Aryans in India. So these are the people not coming from a noble family, but doing noble deeds. That is all in concurrence with Asha. So when they play Thus Spake Zarathustra in our meetings, it is very, very wrong. From my perspective, it is disgrace, to the teachings of Zarathustra. They should not play that. Instead, can you put on the overture of Mozart, and I will tell you why we are doing it just for a moment. Then we toggle with the Mozart, please, the very first one. Yes, can we do that, please?
Not right now. Let us continue on this because.
Okay. Okay, all right, okay. You make the call, that's fine. Okay, now the reason I was saying it that is that overture, and it is an opera, and it is an opera dedicated to the white light of Zarathustra removing the dark light. Okay, so that is the opera that should be played, and that is very significant. I will come to that opera when we are in the third presentation, and that is very significant. Okay, he had a forceful personality. He was humble, exemplified, and extolled high virtues of Asha. And before we go to the proclamation, let me tell you something about Babylon, because it will be in that. So Babylon was captured. Jerusalem was captured in 586 BCE. It had three attacks. One in 605, that was a major prophet called Daniel was taken to Babylon as a slave, but he was in the courts of the kings because he was a seer, he was a prophet, he could interpret dreams, and the kings found him useful from that. 597, when prophet Ezekiel was taken, he's also a major prophet, and he was a prophet for the people over there. And then 586 BC, Nebuchadnezzar then destroyed the temple of Jerusalem and took the Jews as slaves to Babylon. Why they were taken to Babylon, I will tell you when we come to the biblical aspect of it. But he was succeeded by Nabonidus in 560 BCE, and Nabonidus had his son do the administration, and they were both bad rulers. They went against the worship of the people. They used to worship Marduk. Now, Marduk, Auramas, the god is the same thing. There are just different names. Okay, we have to understand from that perspective. So when Cyrus says Marduk, you must understand that it was Auramazda and God in the Bible. So now what happens is that what happened was that this person, Daniel, who was a prophet, on that particular night, the Belshazzar, who is the son of Nabonidus, was having a party with his people. And then there was suddenly a mysterious writing on the wall saying that this is his last day, that the people were unhappy and that he would be no more a king. So that very night, then Cyrus enters Babylon in peace, and all that infrastructure and divine forces were there behind him to make him enter Babylon peacefully. We will see much clearer in the biblical section, but that is the background again, which this proclamation is read out so you can understand it, okay? So King Nabonidus of Babylon put a low person in charge of the country and constructed false temples in Ur and other cities. This is his proclamation I'm reading. He sought to find relief. He searched for all the countries for a savior. Seeking an upright king, he took the hand of Cyrus. He's now talking about Marduk, the god which the Babylonians worship. And then he says, I am Cyrus, the emperor, king of kings, king of Babylon, king of Summer and Akkad, king of 4 quarters of the world. Amid jubilation and rejoicing, I entered Babylon in peace to establish a just government. Strive for peace. My troops wandered peacefully throughout Babylon. I rebuilt sanctuaries and chapels that lay in ruins. I restored their dilapidated dwellings. I returned unharmed to the rightful sanctuaries. So then he repatriates the Jews, he rebuilds the temple, and he starts rebuilding the temple of Jerusalem as commanded by God with Russian treasury. He gives back the treasure that is taken from Jerusalem to Babylon. He returns that to Jerusalem. And an account of that is in Ezra, we will see later on. So this is all a divine plan. And then we will go to the next slide. Okay, now this is the Old Testament. This gets a little intriguing also because a prophet called, he's a major prophet, Prophet Isaiah foretold his birth by his name 150 years before he was born. So he takes the name of Cyrus and says that he will capture Babylon in so and so year. And then he was the Lord Shepherd and anointed in the Bible. An anointed person is the one with a special task given by God. And God gave him the special task to capture Jerusalem, to repatriate the Jews from Babylon to Jerusalem, and then also rebuild the temple and then give them the freedom of worship also, okay? The book of Jeremiah and Daniel predictions. Now, here this is in another major prophet. So Isaiah makes this prediction that Cyrus will release, Jews from Babylon. Now, that is the macro view. The micro view is given by a prophet called Jeremiah. He predicted that the Jews will be exiled to Babylon because Lord the God was unhappy with them. And he was unhappy because the Jews were not following his commandments and worshiping the deities. Now, it will be surprising for you to know that Nebuchadnezzar, who captured Jerusalem, is also the agent of God, and God appointed him to take the Jews to Babylon because he was unhappy. He wanted to keep them there for a couple of generations, that is for 70 years, and then return them back to Jerusalem. And that is also what Daniel had predicted, that the Jews would be in Babylon for 70 years, because you know he was a major prophet. So now this is the treasury account I was talking to you about, Israel, and this keeps an account of all the treasures that were written, and it is in this particular chapter. And now I will like to, you see, now Cyrus is quoted 23 times in the Bible. Yes, he was a very, very, he's respected very much in the Bible. So now I will just give you a small quote from Isaiah, and this is what it says. It says, "Thus says the Lord to his anointed, to Cyrus, whose right hand I have grasped." The same thing with Murdoch, as we saw. "To subdue nations before him and strip kings of their robes, to open doors before him. I will break in pieces the doors of bronze and cut through the bars of iron. I will give you the treasures of darkness and riches hidden in secret places, so that you may know that it is I, the Lord, the God of Israel, who call you by your name." Now, this is what it is, that what he talks about is that God makes it easy for Cyrus to enter Jerusalem. So please, can we have a little bit of a back chat, kind of muted? Thank you. So this is what it is. So now can we go to the next slide, please? Next slide. Okay. Okay, now you would be surprised to know that he's also mentioned in the Quran, and it is Quran Surah verses 83 to 101. He's a figure empowered by Allah. He's mentioned as Dhul Karnain or Zul Karnain, a person with those two horns that you see over here. And then the Muslim scholars, Maulana Azad, you must be very familiar with him, the first education minister of India. He was a Muslim scholar, he was an Islamic scholar, and he was an Arabic scholar. And he says that Dhul Karnain is Cyrus and that he was a great ruler. Now, if we can just watch the video, it is only for the first 1 minute and 15 seconds, because all we have to know is this, reference in Quran.
وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنْ ذِي الْقَرْنَيْنِ. I told you the questions were, who were the people of the cave, who was Dhul Qarnain? But يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنْ ذِي الْقَرْنَيْنِ, they are asking you, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, about Dhul Qarnain. Dhul Qarnain, first of all, must understood, Qarn means a horn. Qarnain, two horns. The person having two horns, who was he? Actually, he was Cyrus, Horus. He was the king of Persia. Before him, Persia was divided into two kingdoms, Paras and Media. But when he rose to power, he joined them together. And he was the actually founder of the great Iranian empire, whose 2,500 years anniversary was, you remember the Jashan, which the king, emperor of Iran, I think about 20 years back, a big ceremony was held. 2,500 years had passed. And he was the founder of the great Iranian
cut it off.
kingdom.
Okay, cut it off.
Empire.
Go back to the slide. Yes, Dave. There is enough evidence to show you that he's also in the Quran. That was the video I wanted to show to you. We go to the next slide now. Okay, so now we come to Cyrus the Great. He was in 5th century BCE. Iran was the first superpower at that time. It was extending from, as you can see over here, from the Balkans to the Indus River. His empire ruled an estimated 44% of the population on Earth. A great audience hall of Darius and Artaxerxes. So he shifted the capital from Pasargad to Persepolis, at that time the capital for the Achaemenid dynasty. And there is cultural evidence. So you see in the bottom of this over here. So These are the ambassadors and the vassals, if you will, that are bearing gifts for the king, and they are coming from the 28 nations that he was ruling over. Here, next slide. So he's son of Hystaspas. He ruled Persia from 521 to 486. There's a lot of intrigue as to how he came in power. I don't have time to go into that. He resumed the temple of building of Jerusalem. So we started with Cyrus, the building of Jerusalem. But when that started, there was an internal strife with the rabbis and all the other people internally. The emperors did not want to participate in that. So they gave them time and space. And then the rest started rebuilding the temple. Temple workers were paid from the royal treasury. And then it was completed in the 6th year of his reign in about 515, 516 BCE. And then he built Persepolis. So we have 70 years from the destruction of the temple of Jerusalem from 586 BCE to 518, 517 BCE. And also the fact that there's another 70-year period when they were taken as slaves from the capture of Jerusalem from 605 BCE to approximately 537, 535 BC. So there are two of these aspects of 70 years. I want to just bring you to the attention, and then we will go to the next slide. So, you know, he elevates the Achaemenian Empire to its zenith, extended from India to Greece and 28 different nations. Next slide. That's basically what it is. So this is the important part, because this is the real contribution of the Achaemenians to the current civilization, if you will, that he kind of fortified all these things and he made a structure for business, for international travel, for coinage and everything. So he was an excellent leader and genius administrator. He set up satrapies. Now that is nothing but dividing the countries into state, if you will. The concept of federalism comes over here. And what he did was that he appointed his own governors to these 28 countries that were under him. All they were supposed to do was collect the taxes and give it back to the Persian treasury. But this is important now. What are the this is the legacy. Introduced gold, silver, and standard coinage. He constructed royal roads and granaries. So he made the infrastructure formally for international trade, which is so important over here. Then he also gave encouragement to free trade. He started the messages and the postal system and trade, and then caravanserais and motels, and introduced the passport system. Now, the waterway between Red Sea and Mediterranean was also joined through a tributary from the Nile. There was a previous pharaoh who had started the building of the canal somewhere in 700 BCE, and then that was incompleted. So Darius took the opportunity of completing that canal and connected Red Sea to the Mediterranean. This is your first example of the goods traveling from one continent to another. Okay, so the next slide, please. So that is a very important, legacy to the current civilization. Now he's presented as a good king, and temple was finished by God's command and command of Cyrus and Darius. Darius wrote, "Unto all people, peace be multiplied unto you." And there are other references. He's mentioned 25 times in the Bible, even more than Cyrus. And I want to read you out his proclamation, because this is where frequent mention is made of Ahura Mazda. So this is Darius's proclamation. "A great God is Ahura Mazda, who created this earth, who created the yonder skies, who created man. I am Darius, the great king, king of kings, king of countries containing all kinds of man, king in this great earth, far and wide, son of Hystaspas. Darius the king says, by the favor of Ahura Mazda, these are the countries which I seized outside Persia." He gives the list. I won't go through that. And then he says, "Darius the king says, Ahura Mazda, when he saw this earth in commotion, thereafter bestowed it on me, made me king. I am king." And then he says, "This which has been done all by that will of Ahura Mazda I did. Ahura Mazda bore me aid until I did the work. May Ahura Mazda protect me from harm in my royal house and this land This I pray of Ahura Mazda, this may Ahura Mazda give to me. So we go to the next slide now, and it should be about success. There you go. There's nothing much to talk about success. Unfortunately, the Achaemenian dynasty, starts receding after that because he lost many wars in Greece. One of his notable things that he was an extremely tall person. He was reported to be 8 feet tall. That's what the scriptures say. Mentioned in the book of Esther, references in the Bible. He's also known as King Ahasuerus in the King James Bible, which I have been quoting you because that is probably the most accepted version of the Bible. The Bible has thousands of versions, and these are his references in the Bible. Next slide, please. Yes, Dee. Okay, so now we have Artaxerxes, who continued the freedom of religion, allowed Nehemiah, Jewish leader, cupbearer to Artaxerxes, supervised rebuilding of Jerusalem, instituted extensive and liturgical reforms, and Ezra continued as well. And these are 14 references in the Bible. A little bit of note of Nehemiah. So Nehemiah is a minor prophet, but however, he was also a servant of Darius. But Cyrus saw some, qualities in him. The cupbearer was a trusted person because he brought wine and water at that time to the emperors. And it was important that, he would be trusted. Otherwise, he could poison anybody. Now, he set Nehemiah free. Nehemiah goes back to Jerusalem, supervises the wall of Jerusalem, as you can see over here. And then he also made some modifications and instituted extensive moral and liturgical reforms, because he was a minor prophet. And he has got 14 Bible references over here. And we go to the last slide, the Magi's. If you have any questions, by the way, please put them in the chat box and the moderator will give it to me, because, there will be a question and answer session. I'm sorry we had to sort of spend a little time with this technological thing, but anyway, we'll get on with it. So, the Magi's, this Gospel 2.12 in St. Matthew, which I will read out. Now, one thing about the Magi's, they are referred to by various names, and they are with the Greek authors. They call them Magnus, which is big, Magawan, Magopat, and they have another, then you come Maga, and then it becomes Mega, which it becomes big, and then you have the Magians. And then often the Greek authors would call the Zoroastrian religion as the religion of the Magians. Now, a Magi, they were very highly evolved Zoroastrian priests, and they had a lot of knowledge about working about nature. And a lot of them were kept in the Achaemenian dynasty, carrying out the liturgical ceremonies over there. So Magi is the one who bears you spiritual gifts. They give spiritual gifts to the universe, to the human being. And that allusions of that is given, and that is confirmed by Professor Jackson, Fry, and Russell. They were also astronomers. Now, it is a misnomer to say that they were maneuvering nature. No, they understood nature in such a way so that you could harness the power of nature. So that is when they see the Star of Bethlehem. They follow it. And Edgar Cayce says, and Edgar Cayce is a big seer in America over here, was only in the last century. A lot of prophecies of him have come true. And he was a very kind of a respected as a semi-prophet, if you will. And then they go to baby Jesus and told Mary that the baby was divine. So now let me read about this Herod Bemekas, and I'll tell you a little short episode about this, okay? Now after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judah in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, where is he who has been born King of the Jews? When Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. He gathered his chief priests and scribes of the people together, and he inquired about the Christ. So they said to him, in Bethlehem of Judea, for thus is written by the prophet. When they heard the king, they departed, and behold, the star which they had seen in the east went before them till it came and stood over where the young child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceedingly great joy. But being warned in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they returned to their own country by another another route. So this is what happened. The fact that they knew nature, they followed the star. First, they had to go through Jerusalem and King Herod. Now, King Herod was an evil person. So when they came to him asking about the Messiah, the king, uh, Herod was taken aback. He was nervous and he asked the scribes, and the scribes told him that it has been predicted, and there are 55 predictions in the Bible at least, and some say it is even 300. So there were 55 predictions in the Bible that a Messiah, a king, would be born of the Jews. As you know, Jesus was a king. So when the scribes told him, he gave an immediate order to slaughter all the newborns at that particular time. So then he tells these three magi's that when you see this person, Jesus the king, come and tell me so that I can go and worship him. That was a very evil statement, because what he wanted to do was take them back and go and slaughter Jesus and all the other newborns as well. So when the Magi's left Herod, they get a dream from an angel not to return back to Herod, because they knew of his evil intentions. So they go to baby Jesus and they bless him. Now, how did they bless him? By praying divine prayers in his ears. And this is what was told by late Kekashru Dasto. And those were the divine prayers they said in baby Jesus. They also warned his mother Mary that this was a very, very divine child and he had to be protected by all costs. When the Magi's left, Joseph now gets a dream at that particular night that they have to immediately leave Bethlehem, because Jesus was going to get slaughtered. So in the middle of the night, Joseph takes Mary and his infant born, and then they go to Egypt. And that is the famous verse of flight to Egypt that is in the Bible. And that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience, ends my presentation. We come to the end. And before I say the summary, can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so this is the collage, and this is, the point is, the images that we saw over here. We will stick on to it. Then after it is over, and if you feel like it, you can give your preference of the three most important images that strike you as timeless Zoroastrian legacy. If you don't know anything, please ask me, but I will briefly go through it. So this is Xerxes, Darius, the three Magi's, human rights there, Cyrus, and these are the vassals, the ambassadors. Persepolis over here, the wall of Jerusalem. This is the conquest of Darius, Persepolis, United Nations building, the 70 years Old Testament. And we saw this is the wall of the Temple of Jerusalem, and these are the conquests. So I've been through that. Next slide. Yes, we'll come back to this collage later on. Okay, so thank you very much for attending. And before we go, I'd like to say one yatha and two asham. Yadahu Ayo Taratusha Sadashi Hachao, Wange Hush das Dominingo, Shautanana Mange Hushmastai, Shatharam Chahuraya Imdriga Bioda Vastarem, Ashim Bahu, Waistamasteusta, Steusta, my Hatshai, Wahistai Shame, Ashim Bahu, Waistamasteusta, Steusta, my Hatshai, Wahistai Shame. For want of time, yesterday I want to ask you, should I go through the summary? It will take me about 3 to 4 minutes.
Let's go through it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Yasdi. So we start with Asha, which is the foundation of our religion. And we saw the various aspects of Asha. And then we came to the tablet. Then we saw the table of the Amashaspas that relate to Asha, and then we came to the tablet. The tablet was discovered in 1879, the original one in London, and the second one is in the United Nations. And on it, it is the declaration of Cyrus the Great, which tells him what he did when he captured Babylon. Now, he was an anointed one by God, and he had also the aspects of Vahukshattra, with which, with his good mind, he had the divine power to rule over people, and that is why he is in memory. He is immortal, so to speak. Okay. So then he captured Babylon and entered Babylon in peace, and he liberated the Jews. They went back to Jerusalem and rebuilt the Temple of Jerusalem, which was on a moratorium because of internal strife. It was also prophesied by prophet Isaiah that he would be capturing Jerusalem 150 years before he was born. The major prophets Daniel and Jeremiah predicted that the Jews would be in Babylon for having disobeyed God for 70 years. Then they go back to Jerusalem and then we go back to he completed the building of the temple of Jerusalem. And also he shifted the capital of from Pasargad to Persepolis. And then we saw about his great administrative genius, what he started facilitating trade, international trade and international travel by means of passport. Then we come to Xerxes, who did nothing, but he lost wars in Greece. And then Artaxerxes, who made Nehemiah the governor of Jerusalem and completed the wall of Jerusalem. And then we saw the three Magi who are highly evolved Zoroastrian priests who understand nature. And they went and blessed baby Jesus, placing prayers in his ears. And then what happens is that Joseph goes away to Egypt, the flight to Egypt, and then Jesus emerges back in Bethlehem after a couple of debates, and that is how Christianity started. Now, what would have happened if the Magi's had gone back to Herod? We don't know had there been Christianity. It's speculative. So that is the end of my presentation, ladies and gentlemen. And I thought that I would share this little kind of thing that I had with me, and I hope you got something out of it. And then can we go back now? Okay, so this is the collage. And then if you have, I will, if we have time, yesterday I would like to give 30 seconds to our participants over here and put in a poll, if you will, the three most images that strike you most relevant to timeless Zoroastrian legacy. Can we do that?
Sure.
Yes, Dave.
Sure.
Okay,
Sure.
so with 30 seconds starts from now, I will give you a 5 seconds heads up. Five seconds more. Okay, sorry, it's funny, but I have to say the polls are out now. Can we go back to the final slide over here? Yesterday, I want to show something. Okay, so here you have, and this will be your final toggle over here. This is a very big chorus, and this is by okay, so there was some comment over here which I was waiting for. So there is a chorus over here by Verdi, and this is a very important chorus. It talks about the time when the Jews were freed from Babylon and go back to Jerusalem. It is emotional, it is poetic, it will give you a great finale to this presentation. And I have cut down the first 35 seconds, so it will be rest for only about 4 minutes. If you wish to continue, you are most welcome. It's up to Yezdi whether he wants to do that. But then I would say that this is a fitting finale. And now I open it to questions and answers or any comments you may have. So if you see anything in the chat box, Yezdi, can you share that with me? I think I saw a little comment over here.
Somebody mentioned that the cylinder itself is so meticulously carved and the photos are great.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. But credit should go to Cyrus the Great and the ancient archaeologists. You know that it is a little bit fragmented. Unfortunately, that is what happens when you start digging it. But thank you for that comment. Yes.
You want to play this?
Yes, I want to play if there are no questions or comments, then we play the chorus. That is the last video. And I have put it front 32 seconds. It starts from 32 seconds in case I have not. Okay, thank you very much, everybody, for joining. Thank you, Yossi, for all your great help. And now if everything goes well, and I don't know when you want to do this, but we'll have a second presentation, and that goes deep into the influence of Cyrus on the founding fathers, on world democracy, and all the human rights. So, in the near future, I know that everybody is kind of constrained by the terrible pandemic that is going on, and our thoughts and our prayers are with them. So whenever it is convenient, just the second presentation, let me know. Give me about 10, 15 days notice. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
Anyone wants to unmute and wants to say something, please go ahead.
Okay, all right. I'm ready for that. Okay.
Yes, Karishma.
Firstly, thank you very, very much, Mr. Billimoria, for a very lovely presentation. And thank you, Mr. Tantra, for organizing this informative session for us, which I do hope reach more people through the recording. My question is this. The concept of Vahukshatra and the concept of equity of opportunity and taking care of all the people that we work with is entrenched in the Gathas, together with Asha and all the other important concepts. Has the Cyrus cylinder given credit to Asho Zarathustra's Gathas? And secondly, those people who reference the Cyrus cylinder, do they actually understand that these are concepts from Asho Zarathustra's Gathas directly?
So it is very difficult for me to speculate if the people who are giving the credit for, and these are the people who are, for example, Neil McGregor, you'll see a lot about him. He's in the London Museum, and I don't know if you have the opportunity to see him. I doubt very much that they know anything about the Zoroastrian scriptures. What we have to do is look at the general macro picture, the general overview. And you know that he did good for humanity and equity and far as human rights were concerned. And you know that there is freedom of religion in the human rights. Now, as far as the Gathas are concerned, the Gathas are copious with Vahumano and with the good mind. And, you just have to read chapter 30. It talks about the battle between the good mind and the evil mind. So all this comes into play into our scenario. And another thing I would like to add is it is very much a reflection about Zoroastrian legacy. It is not particularly a Gatha legacy. We have to understand that it is the Achaemenian Empire who were kind of Zoroastrians, and this encompasses the major aspects of Asha. And Gatha is a very kind of a specific thing that we are talking about. And there are other things that I can talk about, but that is all I can say is that everything about the Zoroastrian religion, the Zoroastrian way of life, the nobility of the deeds, what you have to do and what you have to follow is very much incorporated with the tablet. And the tablet, as you see, that it was also a divine order. So not necessarily that it comes from, it comes from a divine order, as you can see, and this was divinely ordered. And that is what it is.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else needs to say anything to Mr. Sam Billimoria? Thank you very much, Sam, for a wonderful, informative session.
Yeah, thank you very much, Yossi, for putting this together. All the credit goes to you. You have been very diligent in getting back to me, arranging this. And as a matter of fact, you were the person who told me to make the brochure and lay out all the agenda. Now, the second part of our agenda, the second presentation, is it even gets more interesting because it goes through the direct influence. We were talking about the divine aspects. Now comes the material aspects, which are even more interesting, and that how it influences democracy and human rights across the world. The founding fathers, the American democracy, the American Constitution, the Indian Constitution, and you also saw the English rights over there, and then it talks about Magna Carta also. So all these influences are there. And whenever we can arrange it, I know that the people are kind of constrained by the coronavirus over there in India, and our thoughts and prayers, and I'm sure you'll join me in that, are with them. I hope that everything comes to order soon. It will not be a kind of an overnight thing. It will still take 6 months to overturn that. But we are there, and whenever we can, and ESD, if you can give me about a couple of weeks heads up on that, then I can organize everything, and we can do the necessary emailing and social media and arrange the second presentation. That is all up to you, ESD, and Tantra Technologies, of course.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for being a very patient and diligent audience. Wish you all the best. Stay safe and stay protected. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Have a nice weekend.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you. Bye.